Chapter 22 Shadows of the Past. The silence in the forge was thick and stifling, a quiet aftermath to the power Azural had unleashed in her trial. Flickers of blue flame clung to her skin, fading slowly as she steadied herself, Talvar and Soraya standing close by. The weight of the trial, of the challenge she had faced in Eldara, lingered heavily over her, yet a strange peace settled within her heart. Talvar placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his voice low. "The fire is yours now, Azural, bound to you alone." Azural nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "The darkness watches, but so do we." Soraya lingered near the brazier, her gaze fixed on the faintly glowing runes. Her expression held a flicker of something Azural couldn't quite place, part awe, part trepidation. At last, Soraya turned to them, her voice firm. "The forge has given us its strength, but if we're to face Malakar and the darkness that lies ahead, we need to keep moving. Eldara was only the beginning." They moved to the forge's massive gates, which groaned shut behind them, sealing in the trials they had endured. The faint warmth of Eldara's fire clung to Azural like a whisper, but a new resolve was stirring within her. They journeyed through the dense ancient woods, shadows flickering around them as twilight began to descend. The air felt charged, filled with an eerie energy that seemed to press down on them with each step. Soraya kept a wary gaze on the path, her fingers tracing symbols in the air as she muttered quiet incantations of protection. Talvar's sharp gaze remained fixed on Soraya, his stance tense as if bracing for an attack. Finally, he couldn't hold back. "Soraya, you've been hiding something since we left Eldara. We deserve to know why." Soraya's expression darkened, but she didn't respond. Talvar's voice sharpened, frustration edging his tone. "We've all sacrificed for this fight. If there's something we need to know, tell us now." Azural stopped, turning to face Soraya, her gaze piercing yet compassionate. "Soraya, whatever secrets you hold, we're here to face them together." Soraya's shoulders slumped, and she looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "There was a time when I believed I could escape my past, the power I sought, the responsibilities I ran from, but I couldn't hide from it forever." She looked at Azural, her gaze steadying. "You aren't just the Draconis Ignis Aeterni. You're part of something ancient, something tied to the balance of our world. I thought that by helping you I could finally find redemption for the things I've done." Talvar's expression softened, and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Whatever lies in your past, you're with us now." Azural's gaze met Soraya's, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Thank you, Soraya," she said softly. "Your path has brought you here, and that's what matters now." They continued in silence, the weight of Soraya's revelation lingering in the air. The forest grew darker as night fell, and a thick mist began to roll in, swirling around their feet and cloaking the trees. Shadows danced at the edge of their vision, twisting and shifting with an unnatural presence. Soraya's gaze sharpened as she raised her hands, murmuring an incantation to ward off the growing darkness. But as she did, a voice echoed through the trees, a mocking tone laced with malice. "Soraya," it sneered, chilling her to the bone, "still trying to outrun your past?" They froze, their weapons ready as Malakar emerged from the mist, his form cloaked in shadow, his eyes gleaming with a cruel satisfaction. A twisted smile played across his lips as he regarded each of them in turn. "Draconis Ignis Aeterni," he mused, his voice a dark whisper that reverberated through the trees. "Did you think Eldara's fire would protect you from me?" Azural met his gaze, her blue flames flaring in defiance. "You cannot break what you no longer hold, Malakar." Malakar's smile twisted into a sneer, his gaze shifting to Soraya. "Ah, Soraya, my faithful pupil, always so eager to flee. Did you think you could escape me?" Soraya's face paled, but she held her ground, her voice steady. "You don't own me, Malakar. Not any more." Malakar's laughter echoed through the forest, cold and taunting. "You think you're free? You're all bound to me by the choices you've made, and none of you will leave these woods alive." Dark figures appeared from the mist, shadowed forms moving with silent precision, their weapons drawn, their gazes empty and unfeeling. Talvar tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes narrowing as he stepped in front of Azural and Soraya. "Stay behind me," he murmured, his stance unyielding, but Azural stepped forward, her flames blazing brighter, filling the forest with an eerie blue light. "This ends here, Malakar." With a flick of his wrist, Malakar sent his followers forward, their movements swift and deadly. Talvar charged forward, meeting them head-on, his sword flashing in the dim light as he cut through the advancing shadows. Soraya moved beside him, her magic weaving through the air, creating barriers to shield them from the onslaught. Azural faced Malakar, her flames burning fiercely, her gaze unyielding. She raised her hands, her fire erupting in a torrent of blue flame, surging toward him. Malakar's expression darkened, and with a snarl, he raised a hand, summoning a wave of dark energy to meet her attack. The clash of light and shadow filled the air, shaking the very ground beneath them. Malakar's power was fierce, but Azural could feel the strength of Eldara's fire within her, guiding her, fueling her with an intensity that pushed back against the darkness. As their powers collided, Malakar sneered, his voice a venomous whisper. "This isn't over, Azural. You may have the fire, but you cannot escape the shadow." Azural's gaze was fierce, her flames blazing brighter as she stepped forward, her voice steady and filled with defiance. "The shadow ends with you, Malakar. You are nothing but a remnant of darkness clinging to a dying power." With a roar, she unleashed a final surge of flame, her fire crashing against Malakar's defenses with a force that shook the forest. The dark figures around them faltered, their forms dissolving into wisps of smoke as Azural's flames consumed them. Malakar staggered back, his expression twisted with fury as he glared at her, his form beginning to waver. "This is not the end, Draconis Ignis Aeterni," he spat, his voice echoing through the trees. "I will return and I will claim what is mine." With a final furious glare, Malakar dissolved into the mist, leaving only the faint echo of his laughter lingering in the air. As the last of the shadows faded, Azural lowered her hands, her flames dimming as exhaustion settled over her. Talvar approached, his gaze filled with respect and relief. "You did it," he murmured, his voice steady. "You faced him, and you won." Soraya nodded, her gaze warm, a faint smile on her face. "The shadows are gone for now, but he'll be back. We need to be ready." Azural took a deep breath, her heart steadying as she looked at her friends, allies bound by purpose and resilience. The journey was far from over, and she knew that Malakar's threat would return, but for now they had won a hard-fought victory. Together they turned away from the dark woods, their path illuminated by the faint glow of Eldara's fire within Azural. The shadows would come again, but they would be ready to face them, united, strong, and unbreakable.